Students, in lesson 1.1, we are going to be working with place value and patterns. Our essential question for this lesson is, how can you describe the relationship between two place value patterns? So today we're going to be doing a hands-on activity, and we're going to be working with manipulatives in our class. So our materials are going to be our base 10 blocks, but we can also learn to draw those as we continue on with learning in this chapter. So it says you can use base 10 blocks to understand the relationships among place value positions. You can use a large cube for 1,000, a flat for 100, a long for 10, and a small cube for 1. So what we can see is these are the numbers that are represented by these different models, and this is the description of them. So large cube, flat, long, small cube. So first it says, complete the comparison below to describe the relationship from one place value position to the next place value position. Look at the long and compare it to the small cube. The long is 10 times as much as the small cube because you need 10 of the small cubes to get the long. Look at the flat and compare it to the long. The flat is 10 times as much as the long because you need 10 longs to fit inside of the flat. Next, look at the large cube and compare it to the flat. The large cube is 10 times as much as the flat because you need 10 flats to fit inside of the large cube. And we can actually manipulate and work with these different objects to see that that is true. These are true statements. So part B, it says we're going to look at these relationships, but we're not going to look at them as getting greater. We're going to look at them as getting smaller. So the first one says, look at the flat and compare it to the large cube. The flat is 1/10 the large cube because the flat is less than the large cube. So you would need 10 tenths to get the large cube. Next, look at the long and compare it to the flat. The long is 1/10 of the flat. That's because 10 of the longs have to fit inside of the long flat, and we only have 1. Next, look at the small cube and compare it to the long. The small cube is, again, 1/10 the long because we need 10 small cubes to fit inside of the long. However, we only have 1. So we're going to work on this math talk in class. So we're going to continue on in our lesson. Now we're on to draw conclusions. It says, look for a pattern. Describe the pattern you see when you move from a lesser place value position to the next greater place value position. So for this one where it says describe the pattern you see when you move from a lesser place value position to the next greater place value position, what you see is that as I move from a lesser place value position to the next greater place value position, comma, the pattern is that the greater place value is 10 times as much as the next lesser place value position. Number 2, it says look for a pattern. Describe the pattern you see when you move from a greater place value position to the next lesser place value position. So in this one, we're going from a larger number to a smaller number. So we see that as I move from a greater place value position to the next lesser place value position, comma, the pattern is the lesser place value is 1/10 of the next greater place value position. So what that means, students, is that it is less than the next. Because we're going from a greater to a smaller, it is decreasing. It's not as large. So now we're going to move on to then make connections. It says you can use your understanding of place value patterns and a place value chart to write numbers that are 10 times as much or 1/10 of any given number. So we start here and we see the number, the 3 is in the hundreds place, the 0 is in the tens place, and the 1 is in the thousands place. So what number is 10 times as much as 300? So if it's 10 times as much, this is going to move over one place value and become, that's right, 3,000. Because we're multiplying by 10 when we move to the left. Next, it says blank is 1/10 of 300. So if we have 300 and we multiply it by 1/10, it moves to the right one place value and it gets smaller, and our answer is 30. So it says use the steps below to complete the table. Step 1, write the given number in a place value chart. So we're going to write down 10 in our place value chart, and we're just going to write it right here. So 10 times as much as 10 would move to the left one place value, and that number would become 100 because we're multiplying by 10. Now if we have 10 in the place value chart and we multiply by a 10th, we're losing a place value, and we move to the right, and the answer is 1. Next, we have the number 70. So we have 70 in the 7 in the tens place, 0 in the ones place. If we multiply that by 10, or we say 10 times as much, that number would become 700. However, if we multiply it by a 10th, we lose a place value and it becomes 7. And lastly, we have the number 9,000. So 9,000 picks up another place value and goes into the 1,000th place. So if we have 9,000 and we multiply by 10, we move over one more place value and we are in the 10,000th place. So our number would be 90,000. But if we multiply by a 10th and we lose a place value, we would go back into this hundredths place and it would be 900. So boys and girls, in lesson 1.1, we're just exploring place value patterns with the manipulatives, and we're seeing how place value patterns can be increased by 10, or if we're decreasing place value patterns, we see that they're decreasing by 1/10, which is the opposite or the inverse of 10. Try your best on the lesson and the homework in this section.